Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Juergen and Juergen.
Good morning.
And everyone else who's connected. I see we have 52 participants, and the ticker is still going up, but it is 8 a.m. in Washington and 2 p.m. in Europe. So I think we should get going while we probably still will get a few more people joining. My name is Niels Holm-Nielsen. I'm a practice manager for the Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery at the World Bank. I will be facilitating our session today, our 2-hour meeting. I think it's fitting to remind everyone that today is actually Earth Day. So it would have been hard to find a better occasion to talk about the digital Earth. Without much further ado, I will let my Vice President, Juergen Voegele, he's Vice President for Sustainable Development at the World Bank Group, open our meeting today. Juergen, over to you.
Well, thank you, Niels, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone on the call. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today to discuss the potential of existing and new generation digital geospatial technologies for sustainable development. It's really great to see everyone here. As Niels mentioned, this is Earth Day, so couldn't be a better time to actually have this conversation. We have a great set of presentations and discussions planned for this morning, and I'm sure that this event will highlight the opportunities that we have to deepen and scale our work through the use of digital geospatial technologies. For me personally, I see digital geospatial technologies as essential to helping us reach our sustainable development agenda in a way that is evidence-based, that's efficient, and that is inclusive, hugely important. These technologies can give us the data that we need to make better decisions in many areas. And in that way, they will help, for sure, make a greater impact on the ground. In fact, digital geospatial technologies have already helped us achieve much of the work we have done in recent months. I cannot imagine what we would have done without having the backing of that type of technology. We already know how widely available technology has made it possible for us to continue to carry out our work across the world. But this particular technology have allowed our clients to have monitoring and evaluation data that is better than that generated by the more traditional systems. And technology is also enabling more transparency and accountability towards citizens. So I believe you will hear more about the work being done in those areas today. Digital geospatial technologies will also be essential as we move into the recovery from the COVID crisis and into our short, medium, and long-term development planning efforts. These technologies will help us act quickly and go beyond business as usual, and to support transformative actions that account for compound risk and fatalities, cross-sectoral connections for a more holistic and effective response. New and next generation digital Earth imaging technologies can significantly scale the coverage and frequency of data collection while also lowering the costs and complexities involved. And this can lead to real results on the ground, as we have already experienced. For example, we've seen how the data from the European Space Agency's Sentinel-2 mission in 2015 and the subsequent increase in the public availability of high-resolution satellite imagery can be used to increase agricultural outcomes in smallholder farming systems. The quality and usefulness of digital geospatial data is magnified when data is co-created with local ecosystem users and providers. When these users and providers are involved, they can guide the process of data collection, making sure that more relevant data is collected and analysis incorporates an understanding of the local context and situation. So for example, building extraction algorithms are used in Europe to identify the borders of buildings, which is useful for having better information for urban planning processes. But algorithms that are designed through examples from European cities may not work well in African cities, where buildings have a different appearance. So co-creation with local ecosystem users and providers can make it possible to just create algorithms that can provide more accurate information. Creating local capacity to develop context-appropriate technologies can also stimulate the creation of opportunities for local actors, can help develop local ecosystems of digital service providers, creating opportunities for workers and for entrepreneurs. And the effects of having skills in digital geospatial technologies and being able to incorporate these within the broader digital value chain, such as the AI applications, can have real impacts on our ability to manage resources on the ground. So a good example is the one in Zanzibar. The drones were used to enhance the national base map and led to local students digitizing over 500,000 records, tripling the previous building register, and also participating in the local collection of geodata tags for these buildings. The result was an accelerated property registration and titling process and more robust and timely information for the government to make planning and disaster risk management decisions, particularly in those flood-prone areas. The global program we are discussing this morning will make it easier for us to use advanced technologies to realize our sustainable development agenda. It will accelerate the adoption of Earth observation services that are tailored to challenges on the ground in developing countries. It secondly will facilitate coordination with partners and other programs to connect demand and supply. And thirdly, it will support research and development that's based on country demand. We at the World Bank Group, we believe in the power of these partnerships. If we want to succeed, we cannot do it alone. And as I said earlier, we've just learned this so clearly over the last 12 to 15 months. We must work together with technology and space agencies, with our development and local partners. That's why I'm delighted to have Toni Tolker-Nielsen, the Acting Director of Earth Observation Programs at the European Space Agency, join us today. ESA is a long-standing partner of the bank and a key technical partner for the Digital Earth program we want to discuss today with you. So I look forward to a productive discussion. And again, many thanks to all for joining us. Toni, over to you. The floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. It's my great pleasure joining you all today in this important event. As the European Space Agency, incorporating the ambition of our member states and Europe, we are very happy to be part of this exciting new initiative. We look forward to working together with the World Bank to help channel the digital revolution Juergen has laid out for the benefit of those who need it most. Our two institutions joined forces about a decade ago with the objective of demonstrating and exploiting the power of satellite Earth observation and geospatial services for the benefit of global development. ESA has since then provided support to about 100 individual World Bank projects across all domains of sustainable development, most recently under our EO4SD, Earth Observation for Sustainable Development Initiative. For example, Earth observation services have contributed to understanding the impact of the Syrian conflict on local agricultural productivity. A satellite image time series depict coastline changes due to sea level rise to inform action on coastal resilience in West Africa. Methods have been developed to illustrate the sinking of cities in different regions of the world due to groundwater abstraction. Satellite-derived drought indicators are now being integrated in disaster risk financing and insurance products. And EO vegetation and soil moisture indexes support impact evaluation and response action to the African locust outbreaks. A lot of progress has been made at both ends, yet the launch of this dedicated new initiative now is timelier than ever. The digital revolution is advancing fast. We are talking about democratization of space data on the one hand, and co-creation and inclusive development on the other hand. Yet these two aspects do not need to be considered separate. Space has already become an indispensable deliverer of services supporting many of our day-to-day processes. The European Copernicus program delivering free and open data at global scale is a game changer for development, offering that urgently needed, widely accessible basis for evidence-based decision-making. The Copernicus satellite fleet offers the most comprehensive, complete, and advanced EO monitoring capabilities in the world today. It's actually a gold standard that is the envy of many. So Satellite EO provides a wide range of environmental information that is global, comprehensive, accurate, repeatable, and timely. EO can deliver up-to-date mapping of natural resources across whole countries and regions, thus overcoming the serious lack of information for many remote or difficult to access regions. So the development community is taking up the challenge of integrating this digital revolution into standard working practices. The launch of the World Bank's recent World Development Report on data further underlining this increasing acknowledgement and appreciation. As Juergen clearly outlined, progress has been and is being made, but not at the speed nor scale required if we are to sustainably tackle the key societal, environmental, and economic challenges of our time. The COVID crisis has turned our world upside down, and it's still doing it, by the way. We are all still grappling to even understand the full scope of this, and yet, as Juergen highlighted, this is not the time to lose sight of the many other development challenges and compound stresses, including mitigating adverse effects and adapting to changing climate conditions, conflicts and humanitarian crisis, and environmental degradation. Yet again, this pandemic has also sparked an unprecedented collective response following a clear mindset of smart recovery and transformative change. The World Bank's recently announced Green, Resilient, Inclusive Development Framework is a manifest of this approach, whereby data-informed and evidence-based guidance are stressed as crucial to boost efficiency and ensure sustainability. So under extended periods of lockdown around the world, remote approaches have started to dominate the way we work. Remote sensing and satellite Earth observation are a key factor to provide effective solution for remote management and monitoring in the COVID-19 context. Together with the European Commission, ESA has launched the Rapid Action Coronavirus Earth Observation Initiative. The platform uses Earth observation satellite data to measure impacts and monitor recovery aspects associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, including monitoring a wide range of key environmental parameters, as well as economic and human activities. So this is actually a dashboard that has been established and that everybody can access and get information on these essential parameters. The World Bank, through its mission and continuous policy dialogue with developing country stakeholders, is in a unique position to connect demand and supply. The new World Bank Global Program can be the transformative game changer to stimulate growth of local digital economies. It can be the connector, linking up service delivery and local take-up, and it can be the gap filler to build capacity and foster absorption. With the support of our member states, ESA has launched its own dedicated new program, GDA, Global Development Assistance, in support of this partnership between ESA and the World Bank. Technical developments under GDA will be demand-driven, connected to the World Bank's programmatic approach, and serve as a catalyst in helping development onto a path of new normal. The ESA GDA program will ensure that new satellite Earth observation applications are being developed to a pre-operational level. Together with the activities at the World Bank, this coordinated approach provides the basis for scale-up in the bank's operational settings, consequently enabling long-term sustainability. Echoing Juergen's final words, we too believe in the power of partnerships. Europe has the capabilities to provide leadership in advancing this agenda. For sustainable and global impact, we need to go beyond capacity building and towards local co-creation and skills transfer. We stand ready to jointly capitalize on the past decades of efforts on building the world-leading Earth observation service industry in Europe. With the World Bank integrating these capacities programmatically, this is the start of another revolution for the benefit of global development. So let me finish wishing everybody a happy Earth Day. This year's theme is Restoring Our Earth, which focuses on the natural processes, emerging green technologies, and innovative ways that can restore the world's ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Toni, and thank you very much, Juergen. We would like to introduce some of the development projects that both Juergen and Toni referred to. So we recorded these in order to manage all of our time appropriately, but all the task leaders from the World Bank who have been involved in leading these programs are in attendance. So please do feel free to use the chat while we are watching these presentations, and we will be able to answer maybe some questions during the presentations through the chat. And also take note, of course, if you have any questions you want to pose in the follow-on Q&A session. Either when you speak and ask a question or use the chat for a question, please do indicate your institutional affiliation so we get a sense of who you are. We know most of you by name, but not necessarily everyone. So thanks a lot, and over to the first presentation.
Sierra Leone's urban population is rapidly growing, with over 40% of the country's population now living in urban areas. Freetown, as Sierra Leone's capital, accounts for 15% of the country's population, but less than 0.1% of the total landmass. The pressure of rapid urbanization, coupled with a lack of development control and affordable housing, is taking an increasingly heavy toll on the forest expanse in and around Freetown. The fringes of the city are rapidly pushing into the mountains, leading to a tree cover loss of 12% or 555 hectares per annum between 2011 and 2018, increasing water shortages, loss of biodiversity, and an increased exposure to disasters. The Freetown City Council partnered with the World Bank and the government of Sierra Leone under the Resilient Urban Sierra Leone project to fund and address some of the city's unique challenges through implementation of our hashtag Freetown the Tree Town campaign to plant and grow 1 million trees in the Freetown and Western Eyre Peninsulas over the period 2020 to 2022. Through the Resilient Urban Sierra Leone project, the Freetown the Tree Town campaign has established an intricate tree seedling purchasing, distribution, planting, and growing system, which has involved community engagement through community-based organizations and utilized open source online services, geospatial tagging through a tree tracker app, and third-party verification systems to ensure complete transparency during project execution. In addition, the campaign has contributed to the government's efforts to alleviate short-term economic and poverty impacts of COVID-19, as it has created short-term jobs, especially for youth and women. 553 jobs were created in the 48 reforested areas in Freetown during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Freetown City Council has partnered with Greenstand, a technology firm based out of the US and Tanzania, to digitally track Freetown's new trees. So our 1 million trees, for the 1 million trees, we will build and are building a digital footprint based on satellite mapping and regular geospatial mapping that allows for the tracking of individual trees. The Tree Tracker app that was created by Greenstand and customized for the Freetown City Council is used by community-based organizations, of which we have 10 that are currently operational, has already captured 250,000 trees that have been planted and are growing to date. And each of these trees are tracked on a monthly basis. The growers care for the trees and take periodic geotagged photos of them as they grow, which gives us a real-time understanding of the health and the survival of the tree. We have an 80% tree survival metric target that we have set against the 1 million trees?
So the Freetown Tree Planting Program is participating in a World Bank funded pilot project looking to develop a repeatable workflow for monitoring urban tree canopy. And this program would help us to track and quantify greening efforts. And Dar es Salaam is the other location that's also participating in this. So as part of this program, we're using satellite imagery, and we're working, in this case, with student mappers to extract what we call training data that would identify existing examples of canopy cover. And this training data then is used to train a machine learning algorithm to detect canopy. And our mappers, they used Xavia's groundwork platform. So that's a tool, an online tool. They didn't have to download anything, but this tool allowed them to digitize or capture and then label representative samples of existing canopy cover that we would then use to train and generate the algorithm.
Under the Russell project, there is an ability now for the city to manage its national resources and mitigate critical recurring hazards through scaling up spatial planning capacity with a robust data-driven approach.
Climate change, complex crisis risks, migration, natural disasters, they all call for new risk information that is timely, global, and more reliable. This is essential to scaling up and increasing the impact of risk financing applications worldwide. Since 2019, the joint partnership between the Finance Global Partner Practice at the World Bank and the European Space Agency leverages satellite data to support ex-ante and forecast-based financing to a wide range of risks, including drought, flood, food insecurity, earthquakes, pandemics, and other complex crises. Ultimately, providing support to governments and decision makers to develop parametric insurance, cat bonds, or quick response budget lines to protect populations, livelihoods, and economies from the impact of crises and disasters. A quick overview of our partnership with ESA, highlighting the demand and some of the proposed solutions that leverage satellite data, either at sort of capacity building level or through the development of practical, demand-driven solutions on risk financing. Highlight number one is the Next Generation Drought Index platform, the NGDI. We know that information such as the actual impact on livelihoods materializes in the case of a drought very long after the event has started to develop, sometimes 9 to 12 months afterwards. We also know that satellite-based drought indicators are very early proxies that characterize the ultimate impact of a drought and are available very early, sometimes months before the actual harvest. So there's a clear gap to be filled there in terms of providing clients and decision makers with access to that information so that financial response to food insecurity and affected populations can be addressed very early on in the process. And this is where our World Bank ESA partnership is critical in providing access to free, open, global data, including of the Copernicus constellation, for better protected populations with quick financing solutions where needed and when most needed. Another couple of slides highlighting also the potential to operationalize the exposure mapping from satellite data, helping identify what crops are being grown where, and therefore how to better target our financial response efforts. And finally, some features of the NGDI platform, including on the co-design process and convergence of evidence approach. Highlight number two is the use of medium to high resolution satellite data to better respond to climate risks faced by the financial sector. One of the key applications here is on the environmental change and climate risk monitoring to better anticipate, address physical risk from climate change, transition risk, as well as liability risks and opportunities faced by companies, regulators, and investors globally. Out of the 50 essential climate variables released by the Global Climate Observing System, along with WMO, almost 2/3 can only be observed from space, making satellite data a very critical component of climate monitoring for sort of greening the financial systems and greening investments worldwide. Another example of high-resolution data for exposure mapping through identification of the built environment. And finally, highlight 3 on the putting to use all of these different features in the case of MENA and in particular Morocco. Here through the example of exposure mapping, including public infrastructure, residential, commercial, industrial buildings, not only for risk financing, but more broadly speaking for risk management applications, including post-event flood extent mapping through high-resolution satellite data. In conclusion, the current COVID crisis shows our critical it is to act early and to support decision-making with the right information at the right time. Following recent developments of satellite technology in the past decade, satellite data and big data now allow to collect and process unprecedented streams of observations so that complex and emerging risks can now be addressed through new kinds of policy and risk financing instruments. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm from Bargny, a coastal town in Senegal where our homes, our assets, and often our pride are slowly being swallowed by the sea. Imagine life in Bargny. Fisheries are dwindling, buildings are sinking, plastic is polluting the ocean, and productive lands are invaded by sea salt. But this is not unique to Bargny. Along West Africa's coast, communities are facing heightened risk from coastal erosion, flooding, and pollution. Some areas lose over 20 meters of shoreline every single year. Coastal ecosystems are degrading, and livelihoods depending on them are lost or at risk. I think that it's fantastic that the World Bank put together the Wahba program to develop and bring new, innovative solutions for resilient coastal livelihoods and communities.
The sheer scale and complexity of these challenges requires a concerted, comprehensive, and sustained effort across the entire region. These challenges can be prevented, but require moving beyond traditional approaches that focus largely on infrastructure solutions and require adopting a holistic approach to resilience. That's why, alongside engineering solutions, Wahba places a special focus on nature-based and people-centered approaches. So through interventions such as dikes, riverbank vegetation, mangrove rehabilitation, and dune restoration, Wahba aims to protect people and their livelihoods from these risks, while also creating new opportunities for affected communities, engaging them for the sustainable management of coastal resources.
Foofu sama néeg vague yi bu ñu jógee dañuy dugg ba sama biir néeg bu fekkee géej gi dafa nas xànk vague yi di dóor man duma mën a toog sama biir néeg c'est parce que sama biir néeg day tooy su ma tëjee bunt bi ça rentre dans ma maison dans ma chambre.
And we knew that the challenges had to be addressed at scale and that the World Bank couldn't go it alone. So Wahba was purposefully designed so that World Bank IDA financing at country and regional levels would bring multiple partners on board to mobilize technical expertise and financing, and collectively create a movement that shines light on coastal issues and provides solutions that will benefit coastal communities for a long time to come.
Data used to be fragmented with every country or organization doing their own thing. Now, with the West Africa Coastal Observatory, we have virtual space to synthesize and validate data, as we did for the 2020 Regional State of the Coast Report. Wahba has mobilized regional and international institutions, the Climate Technology Center and Network, European Space Agency, French CEREMA, and NASA, to name a few, to develop and compile long-range data. Through technology, we have set the stage for the next generation of applications, with Earth observation, combining it with multiple data sets for improved coastal risk modeling. With these digital tools, countries now have rigorous and accurate information for decision making.
The West Africa Coastal Areas Program WACA is transformative as it builds on existing institutions, regional networks, and international innovation. With the many partners, countries are set to responding to socioeconomic shocks, protecting ecosystem services, and managing coastal erosion, flooding, and pollution. In Benin, in one of our first set of 22 sites, we rehabilitated mangroves and secured the riverbank. As a result, 36,000 people are now less exposed to coastal erosion and flooding. West African countries have what it takes for a green, resilient, and inclusive development. We thank the many partners that have made this possible. Let's scale up our support. Go to www.wacaprogram.org, and thank you very much for your attention today.
The Geo-Enabling Initiative for Monitoring and Supervision, or GEMS, was launched by the World Bank's Fragile Conflict and Violence, the FCV group, to create global public good by building client capacity in digital data collection and analysis, and systematically enhance project monitoring and real-time risk management in FCV settings. The main idea behind GEMS is to get eyes on the ground where we can't always have boots on the ground. Let's take the example of a small town called Mafa in the northeastern Nigeria. This is a conflict-ridden region, hardly accessible to bank staff because of security. But there are bank-funded activities implemented in this town. A picture and the exact location of the activity were taken using a smartphone. The GEMS initiative has developed a methodology to systematically collect rich project data from the field using a simple smartphone. The principle behind GEMS is to bring a spatial dimension to project data. We call the rocket science the data coming from remotely sensed technologies like satellite and drone imageries. The GEMS team has worked closely with the European Space Agency to channel these works through the Fragility, Conflict and Security EO4SD cluster and with the Geospatial Operations Support team. Then there is what we call the pocket science, or data collected in real time from the field using smartphones. GEMS is about that pocket science. The two technologies are complementary, and combined, you get actionable data that we like to call the socket science. The GEMS team is currently working with the project P360 within the bank to build a centralized platform that combines multiple layers of geospatial data from various sources. The GEMS methodology uses a free open source user-friendly mobile data collection tool called Kobo Toolbox, which is donor funded. It has been developed by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative. It's a kind of simple tool that is very appropriate for challenging settings and allows to collect data online and offline. Using this tool, project implementing agencies are able to collect data in real time from the field at the most granular level. On this map of the Democratic Republic of Congo, each point on the map represents a site where a bank-funded project has intervened. Each point gives information about the sub-project, including its GPS location, the description of the activity at the site, and even a photo that gives an idea of what has been done at the exact location. With the current pandemic situation, this is a very effective way to continue supervising and monitoring projects remotely. To date, more than 130,000 locations of bank-funded sub-project sites have been mapped in 18 countries. And these are data and information that can be leveraged to strengthen countries' resiliency. But what GEMS is really about is capacity building initiative. The entry point is a 3-day workshop training where we teach participants everything they need to know to be able to run the digital monitoring platform independently by themselves. We build local capacity, which contributes to improving digital skills locally and to enabling monitoring and supervision standards owned locally and mainstreamed through bank-funded projects. We are also about to collaborate with a global evaluation initiative to further create public good of local MME skills in countries. Since the COVID mission constraint, we have adapted all of our training online, and the past year alone, we have trained more than 1,800 people online from 70 countries. I'd like to conclude with this message from clients in Uganda.
For real-time data and better MME,
build client capacity with simple ICT.
Thank you very much.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about our work on improving crop area and yield measurement in smallholder farming systems by integrating surveys and satellites. Since improving agricultural productivity is an effective strategy to reduce poverty and food insecurity, doubling productivity and incomes of smallholders is one of the targets within the Sustainable Development Goal of ending hunger. One metric for agricultural productivity is crop yield, which requires accurate measurements of crop production and cultivated area. The problem is that the crop yield estimates in low and middle income countries are often unavailable or unreliable, particularly where productivity improvements are needed the most. Which brings us to the 50 by 30 initiative, an ambitious partnership between countries, several bilateral donors, and multilateral organizations, including the FAO, the World Bank, and IFAD. The initiative aims to support 50 low and lower middle income countries between now and 2030 to improve the availability, quality, and use of agricultural survey data produced by their statistical systems. In parallel with these developments on the ground, there has been a dramatic increase in the availability of high-resolution satellite imagery. On the right are the European Space Agency's Sentinel-2 twin satellites, which are providing 10-meter resolution imagery for the entire Earth every 5 days and for free. As a result, we are observing agricultural plots across the developing world with clarity that we could not have fathomed just a few years ago. So our vision is a system that combines satellite data with georeference objectively measured survey data from the ground. The ground data can in turn train machine learning models that can identify plots, classify crops, and estimate crop area and yields for entire landscapes beyond the locations in which the surveys are conducted. Over the period of 2015 to 2020, we have successfully operationalized these ideas at subnational scales in Uganda and Mali. Here are some plot-level maize yield comparisons from Uganda. In panel A, we compare full plot crop cuts on the ground to satellite-based yields that are calibrated to those measures, while in panel B, we again compare full plot crop cuts to this time uncalibrated satellite yields, which are solely based on satellite imagery and crop models. Both calibrated and uncalibrated satellite yields do well in terms of capturing yield variability on the ground. But uncalibrated satellite yields are systematically overestimated. See the distribution shifted to the right in panel B. This emphasizes the importance of using ground data for calibration purposes. Now, new research under the 50 by 30 initiative is zeroing in on the recommended practices that would maximize the utility of recurrent household surveys for satellite-based estimation of agricultural outcomes. Using Sentinel-2 imagery and georeference plot locations collected in national household surveys from Malawi and Ethiopia, we have mapped areas cultivated with maize at 10-meter resolution across these two countries for 4 agricultural seasons from 2016 and 2019. In doing so, we demonstrated that a machine learning model trained with our survey data can classify smallholder plots cultivated with maize with up to 75% accuracy. We also show that small erosion in predictive accuracy of our models under less preferable approaches to georeferencing plot locations in household surveys can in fact result in large overestimation of total area cultivated with maize. So our message is again using the right training data collected with the right survey models for Earth observation applications. So what are we doing right now to operationalize integrated survey satellite applications in service of our client countries? First, we're working with several like-minded partners with whom we already started pushing the frontier. Second, we're continuing our research on survey methods in remote sensing, and will ultimately be distilling this research into guidelines for designing and implementing large-scale surveys that can provide the required training data for downstream Earth observation applications on high-resolution crop type mapping and crop yield estimation. And with those guidelines in hand, we'll be working with the national statistical offices to refit their survey operations to collect the right ground data. And finally, we'll continue to work with client countries to make sure that the resulting data and research are used for policy design and monitoring purposes. This is of course easier said than done, but with data and integration, ending poverty and hunger is within reach. Thank you very much.
Urbanization happens, and monitoring it at the planetary scale is extremely important to support a number of key applications as risk assessment or socioeconomic development, just to cite a couple. To give you an idea of the dimension of the phenomenon, let's consider that in the next 30 years, 2.5 billion additional people are expected to be living in cities, the vast majority in Africa and Asia. In this framework, at DLR, we have launched a suite of products, namely the World Settlement Footprint, WSF, composed of open and free high-resolution global layers aimed at supporting a comprehensive analysis of urbanization. In particular, the suite has been developed with the support of ESA, the World Bank, and Google, and has the objective to help understanding the phenomenon and in turn to take decisions before it happens for supporting sustainable development. The suite includes the WSF 215, outlining the 2015 global settlement extent, and the novel WSF 2019, which exhibits even higher quality and detail. To study past trends, we generated the WSF Evolution, which outlines the growth of the settlement extent from 1985 to 2015 on a yearly basis. Furthermore, on top of that, we are now completing a novel layer which also estimates the percent impervious surface. This is particularly useful to identify areas experiences a considerable loss of green spaces, for instance. Last but not least, the series includes the WSF 3D, which estimates globally the height and volume of buildings, and the WSF population, where the number of people per pixel is estimated by redistributing sensor figures available at the finest administrative level. Through a closed feedback loop, the WSF suite has become of great importance for a number of World Bank activities. However, this collaboration is now moving to the next level. Indeed, the bank has started to actively support the improvement and quality assurance of the WSF layers through the collection of local information, which is of fundamental importance. In particular, this has been made possible through micro-working campaigns.
We digitized the whole Zanzibar island, and we have a building footprint of around 500,000 buildings.
First, I'm pleased to be part of Micro because I was no idea in GIS, but after that, it reshaped my career. I want to be a GIS expert.
Pilots have yet taken place in Kenya, Mali, and Tanzania, mobilizing hundreds of students. This allowed us to gather tens of thousands of reference labels through relatively simple tasks to be performed on specific mobile applications. Here, webinars have been organized that allow not only to train the students, but also to raise awareness and understanding of the background technology. These activities are setting a new paradigm where the development of a new technology shall be performed by co-creation with both World Bank teams and end user through a participatory experience. This will make it possible to create novel tools directly building on users' experience that are actually responding to their needs.
What is amazing with this new technology is that it allows to see cities as three-dimensional, and this changes the way we look at density. Looking at heights and floor area for over 400 cities across the world, we can see that people in richer cities have more space, making it easier to comply with self-isolation and social distancing. It is economic geography and not physical geography which drives difference in contagion risk. What makes a difference in neighborhood income is investment in housing structure, infrastructure, and amenities, which transform places from being crowded to being dense and livable, and hence decrease contagion risk. A methodology was rapidly deployed to bring this at scale and in a timely manner, and identify hotspots based on the inability to social distance and the proximity to key services where people may cluster, even in a lockdown. In Kinshasa, one of the world's fastest growing cities, the predicted hotspots have been used to develop a vulnerability index and targeting cash transfer to the most vulnerable and most populated neighborhood in the city. Hotspots for more than 55 cities are now available on a platform for teams to be able to further do these overlays and inform project intervention. The data was also used in Urbanization Reviews, a World Bank product offering a framework for city leaders to make tough decisions on development in their cities and providing diagnostic tools to identify policy distortion and analyze investment priorities. In Somalia, for example, it helped convey the message that cities are growing very fast and in a fragmented way, making it more expensive to deliver services and create jobs. We are really looking forward to continuing bring this technology as we support clients to adopt a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development, and as they recover from COVID, thanks to the information available through the collaboration with DLR, ESA, and other partners. Thank you very much for your attention.
This is a new model for skills and capacity building that we've implemented here in Dar es Salaam, really to confront the challenge of unplanned and rapid urbanization happening across sub-Saharan Africa, and in particular Dar es Salaam, which is 80% unsurveyed. The 6 million inhabitants is growing at over 1,000 new entrants per day, and traditional methods for surveying, mapping and managing the city really can't keep up with the growth the city is experiencing in peri-urban areas, where some neighborhoods are doubling every 4 years. So we've been looking for a new approach that allows us to go digital and to scale quickly and affordably, based primarily on using local people and local devices. So it's about reductions in cost and complexity and training new opportunities and new tools to the next generation. We see these tools being in the new suite of Earth observing technologies, the latest satellite monitoring datasets and associated classifiers and AI services, combined with low-cost drones or mobile phone data and household surveys. So this is something we've built into the curricula of 4 universities here in Tanzania, working in partnership with other European universities in Turku, Delft, Dortmund, and Twente, and training students every year from geography, disaster risk management, spatial and urban planning on Earth observation for climate resilience and data services. But not just the training, really the key here is also the practicals. Mass internships under the Placement and Industry program to co-create services for the city that we know are necessary. Some examples really have been to calibrate and enhance the flood forecast and flood risk models of the city, where there's very little historical data on hydrology, but also flood impacts. So here we have a satellite-derived inundation model, but it's calibrated by local youth coming and tagging 30,000 households who have been affected by flooding in the recent decades, and getting their oral flood histories onto the map in a geocoded way. To do this, we've also digitized off the satellite over 1 million buildings across the city to update that building footprint to reflect the reality on the ground. In this way, we are combining in situ knowledge collected by mobile data through students with the expert model created through traditional hydrological tools. But this can help us go further in the event of flood damage assessment, where we respond quickly to an event. We can mobilize these communities to have the flood impacts collected from the households and placed on the map. We've also been able to apply this to longer-term flood drainage. So the storm drainage master plan of the city relies on drain conditions, which are very hard to assess in a city that's changing so quickly, where you have hundreds of kilometers of drains that are really not digital. So sending students on a mass industrial placement to assess the condition of the drain. Are they buried? Have the culvert closed off the drain? Is there vegetation? Is there sedimentation? Is there solid waste blocking this drain? Has the concrete collapsed or not? Is really critical, and this needs to be updated on a regular basis. So it's a challenge where hundreds of students with very simple rulers and maybe geocoded open data collection kit apps can tag the image and update that infrastructure to support the storm drainage master plan. A similar application has been the erosion model of the city, where we've seen that a lot of the western expansion has led to increased sedimentation rates in the river, contributing to the flooding. But we don't have a good erosion model. Now, these can be derived from satellite sources, but it really needs to be calibrated with accurate, high-resolution surface soil information. So the students went out and collected over 650 samples, geotagged them using their mobile phone, identified labels, dried, sieved, and weighed those samples and entered that into the database to support the erosion risk monitoring index. And so they've been able to co-create this sediment model and erosion model that we've been developing for the city. The final piece here, also on erosion control, has been the tree cover. There's a natural asset provided by the the urban trees in terms of soil retention and rainwater runoff reduction from slowing down that rainfall. So mapping the existing canopy of trees in the city and what those trees are, actually getting to the tree trunks and identifying them, has been really critical to help manage, maintain and model the effect of these trees in the mid-basin and upper basin and help us plan for an upper basin restoration program in the future. So in this way, the Resilience Academy is teaching both the new technology skills, but also the real-world problems and how to overcome them by working together in applied research, in mass internship, and also in direct services for local city government. So throughout the process, the students gain valuable skills and insights, as well as relationships with the city. But most of all, they really get empowered by learning to develop professional services with their own tools in their pocket and what's freely available on the web. But let's hear it from them.
Most of the area which have been affected by the flood have not been mapped.
This data you give to us will be helpful, especially for the production of maps.
We are able to identify the challenges which face the communities.
I use this GPS receiver so as to getting information about tourism activities, and also will help even the community to understand their area and how they can get services and where.
My interesting is data science. I love data, I love information.
Now they get to apply what they learn in actually real life, and it's a very good feeling when you see that you have made an impact to the society.
Wow, wonderful. We're trying to give you a flavor of the kind of development engagements that we think are relevant and made possible in part due to digitization and remote sensing and the technologies that we're discussing today and around the program that we're discussing today. But this is, of course, only a flavor. But I do hope you picked up on some of the possibilities that we feel and that we sense that are out there. I would like now to invite you all, or anyone who would like to ask a question or provide reactions. We do have a few of the beneficiaries you saw in some of the presentations in attendance as well, in addition to the World Bank team leader for the engagement. So in some cases, you might be able to hear directly from them, or maybe any of them would like to raise a hand and make a reaction. You can use the reaction function at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to organize the intervention. So the floor is open.
Raise hand.
Hi, Niels. I have a question for Edward. The amount of work done in Dar es Salaam is amazing, and I just wonder if there are plans to scale that or transfer the lessons and the programs to any other areas.
Hi, yeah, this is Edward Anderson. Thanks for the question. Certainly, the Resilience Academy has itself been evolving as a concept. So each year we're learning new features, getting more requests. We actually have one of the coordinators from Sequoia University online, as well as from Turku. And we've been discussing what can be a model that can replicate across other sub-Saharan African countries. We see very similar challenges across the portfolio. This fits particularly well where we have sort of a primary or secondary city with a university locally that is deploying students. I think there's a shortage of opportunities for them to get their hands on real-world data and real-world collaboration with local government. And so that's an important feature, but there's also these sort of digital public goods, the curriculum, some of the tools and data sets, the collaboration with sort of European partners that can all be replicated at very low marginal cost. So we have an aspiration to create a regional program, perhaps focused in Africa or possibly globally. But we do think it should be sort of demand centered in its early phase. So we are talking to particularly Nigeria, and potentially in Kenya, other institutes and countries that would like to set this up. And as we sort of grow to 3 or 4, then I think it could make sense to explore a regional platform of some kind. And this very much fits with the sort of objectives of the Digital Earth Partnership. So I can't sort of tell you exactly what will happen. I think it's in the works, but that aspiration is there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. Thanks.
Any other questions or reactions at this stage? Otherwise, we'll proceed to talk about the specific program. Last call for a raised hand, a reaction. I see none, I hear none. All right, we'll proceed to the second part of the session then, and I would like to invite Sameh Wahba, my boss, the Global Director for Urban, Land and Resilience at the World Bank, to introduce us to the program. Sameh, over to you.
Thank you, Niels, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I have a brief presentation on the proposed Digital Earth partnership, whose objective really is to harness the new generation of Earth observation services for international development. Next slide, please. So our goal is really to accelerate sustainable development through the adoption of digital Earth observation services, and to be able to do so in a way that leaves a long-lasting impact on the partners, the clients, and the beneficiaries. Next slide, please. So specifically, we have three main underlying objectives: enhancing the outcomes of service delivery and development work across sectors, improving data services for spatial monitoring, decision support and risk management activities, and then creating solutions that are locally appropriate, adapted to local conditions, affordable, scalable, and sustainable. Next slide, please. Now, this builds on a 10-year partnership with the European Space Agency, with the World Bank. And today, this partnership continues as fruitful as ever. And we've achieved many great things. You have seen examples of our collaboration, of the power, the potential of this Earth observation, this digital work, and this suite of technologies to support sustainable development, whether it's working in fragile and conflict states, whether it's working on any of the aspects of sustainable development. And what we want to do now is really to step it up. We really want to push for scale and impact. So when we look into the future, we would like for the work of this partnership to be guided by a set of principles that we've identified from the many lessons learned, the successes, the failures of our various operations. Because we believe that by supporting a partnership that meets these principles, we will be able to accelerate digital Earth technologies that are useful and usable to developing countries. So let me elaborate. Next slide, please. The first is a demand-driven approach. This means that our activities are rooted in the needs and the real-world demand from client governments and beneficiaries. The second is aiming for scale and sustainability. And we would do so by connecting these activities in this partnership with World Bank operations. So in this way, we create activities that can go to scale and be sustainable. Because when we embed our work in this partnership within a project, we can ensure that the activities benefit A, from major investment operations, and B, from engagement at national and subnational level and incorporation into local strategies. The third is a co-creation approach. That means co-creation between global and local stakeholders and between traditional and new data providers. This would mean a program that is focused on skills and opportunities for local participation in developing the final services and in providing a feedback loop to global providers. Within a country, co-creation would aim then to help governments connect in new and better ways with universities, tech hubs, etc. The fourth is really a focus on ethics, because ethics is key to ensure that technology is adopted in a way that doesn't do harm. So it's critical to adopt and adhere to ethical frameworks around data provisions that put provisions for protecting vulnerable groups, safeguard sensitive data from theft, addressing information bias, and also incorporating provisions to protect privacy, provide accountability, and minimize intrusion. The fifth is the notion of an ecosystem, and this would mean a partnership with a broader view of the digital ecosystem relating to Earth observation, including satellites, drones, Internet of Things, traditional data providers, and the entire value chain of digital production, the life cycle of data sets, and decommissioning. Now, the role of local authorities and managing for change will be essential part of this ecosystem approach. 6, at the heart of the program is a building of capacity through inclusivity. That would mean investments in skills and in capacity to leverage today's technology and prepare for the next generation technologies like artificial intelligence. And in doing so, the program will ensure inclusive opportunities for women and digitally disadvantaged groups. You have seen the various examples about incorporating youth, incorporating women, incorporating various groups and transforming them into data entrepreneurs, into skilled persons working with data, with the technology, with the hardware, with the software, etc. The 7th is to support an equitable access to data by adhering to and promoting the use of open standards for data licensing, sharing, security, and quality. And last but not least, transparency and accountability. Because satellites offer standardized and independent information source that we can update daily and we can scale across countries, then building data services based on such a platform would ensure comparability, transparent reporting, and holding stakeholders into account. Now, these principles were exemplified in those series of presentations that we saw earlier, whether it's skill building, co-creation opportunities offered through the Resilience Academy, or the strong client demand, like you've seen in the case of Sierra Leone and with Mayor Yvonne Aki-Sawyer, or the best practices and public good approaches that were developed by the Data Smart Agriculture project that can be shared and enable scaling, and many others. Next slide, please. So what would be the potential activities under this partnership? One is technical assistance, so for demand-based services in development operations. The second is training and capacity building, and in fact, the creation of jobs. It's about developing local ecosystems of digital service providers, including digital opportunities and entrepreneurships. And a small little plug on digital jobs. Many of you know that one of our most important strategies as a development community in a post-crisis effect, whether it's a post-disaster or it's a post-conflict or it's a post-pandemic, as in a situation like this, is to focus on supporting livelihoods of the poorest and most vulnerable by introducing labor-intensive public works. Now, in a post-COVID recovery world where you need social distancing, designing labor-intensive public work in a socially distanced way, etc., requires innovations. And thinking about, instead of your regular cash for works, as a digital cash for works becomes really an innovative way of taking it forward, this support to livelihood and job creation and skills development. The third potential area is partnerships to facilitate the supply and demand coordination in investments, in training, and in standards development. The fourth is mainstreaming into operations. So mainstreaming all the learning that we have, the methods that we develop in operations across the World Bank Group, but also in engaging with our clients. The fifth is developing a guidance and applying best practices for geodata safeguards and ethical considerations. And then last but not least, public goods. So data, tools, services, curricula, and standards that are accessible and support the overall goals for the program. Next slide, please. Now, the domains of work, as you see, it's a broad engagement across the sustainable development sectors. So on a sectoral focus, you've got agriculture, education, energy, environment and natural resources, disaster risk management, health, infrastructure, water, and then a range of cross-cutting themes, whether it's climate change, digital development, fragility, conflict, and violence, as you've seen in the case of the GEMS engagement or platform, gender issues, governance, inclusion, and lastly, sustainable jobs. Next slide, please. Now, this partnership will come with a large range of benefits. From a development partner perspective, the benefits will include coordinated resource allocation, better access and feedback from stakeholders about the impact, and an increased transparency and accountability of development investments and the reporting on the use of taxpayers' money. For national space agencies, this would bring new service requirements, validation and ground truthing of data sets, and would lead to an increased adoption and digital feedback loops. For the technical partners, whether they're technical institutes, universities, access to local partnerships for data with all its dimensions, whether it's labeling, validation, aggregation, and of course, joint research and development, and a better articulation with the policymakers at local or national level. At the national level, it would bring technical and financial resource mobilization for local digital services and create the enabling environment. Regional organizations also would benefit with enhanced capacity and opportunities to engage at regional level. And then lastly, for the local communities, that would become local digital communities, it's about access to information. It's about skills development to adopt this new generation of Earth observation services and developing new opportunities. So in a sense, this is a win-win-win across the board for all engagement. It disrupts the normal way we've been doing business on issues related to data, but it also harnesses existing data providers and creates those partnerships. You will have seen how, in the case of the Dar es Salaam flood model, we have combined, if you will, the flood modeling with the ground truthing with the community. So there's a way to work on the ground and from the sky. Last slide, please. We have 3 open questions for the conversation, and any other questions you'd like to bring. So we'd love to hear from you, to discuss with you. A, does this program proposal respond well to the existing gap in terms of access to Earth observation data and services, culturally appropriate? Second, is the proposed co-creation approach, as I said, between global and local and between traditional and new data providers, is it the right approach? And third, how can we build and expand on external partnerships? What are keys for collaboration? So in a sense, we'd love to hear from you. Is it demand driven? Is it responding to a need? Is it the right approach, co-creating? And how can we expand the partnerships and the collaboration? And of course, any questions you'd like to bring are very welcome. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and we'd love to open the conversation. So I'll pass it on to Niels to moderate the conversation, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Sameh. Salam will monitor the raised hand function. Please do use the chat as well if you want to pose a question or a comment in the chat. The 3 leading questions that we posted on the last slide of Sameh's presentation, we would in particular love to hear from all of our development partners and other institutional partners on your views on these. So the floor is yours. Don't be shy. Salam, you'll let me know if there's anything coming in.
Sure. And participant can use the chat feature as well.
Maybe, I mean, I know we've bombarded you with lots of information, but I mean, we really are excited about this work. I think the potential is immense in terms of, you know, I mean, think about it. I mean, we're just closing in on over a year of working from home, from wherever we are. I mean, the work goes on the ground, implementation of development projects, clients are engaging. How do we support them, you know, and all the potential that this can bring about, and all the other innovation sectoral and cross-sectoral that you've seen. So are we on the right track? Are we duplicating something out there that we might not know of? Are we responding to a need? Would be great to hear. And I think we're starting to see some comments. You know, Anna has a question, so perhaps can we pass the floor to Anna Belander?
Sorry, yes, this is Anna. No, my question was just related to thematic focus and whether you've considered also having a specific focus on biodiversity in addition to climate change.
In a nutshell, I can definitely answer it, say yes, Anna. I mean, we had to. I mean, we wish we'd have more time to show you examples of the reach of this work across all sectors, and we worked on biodiversity, on forestry, etc. Unfortunately, we had a narrower time frame, so we selectively put some videos. We wanted to give you a flavor of all the impacts, like for instance, the impact on communities, the impact on local stakeholders and their buy-in, the co-creation aspect. But definitely biodiversity, forestry, there's lots of focus on watersheds. I mean, we've got lots of specifics, and in the list of sectoral themes that I've listed, that would be, if you will, within the broader range of the activities covered within environment and natural resources, yes.
See a raised hand from Tove. Over to you, Tove.
Thank you very much. So I work at CEDA, and as a bilateral donor, I'm wondering how we can best link you up to some of our other partners. I'm sure that big and small actors alike would be very interested to get to know these programs more and to see how the technology could be used in relation to their programs and projects. So if you could elaborate a bit around that and see how we can best spread the word of your great work. Thank you.
Peter has a raised hand. Niels.
Peter, come in.
Yeah, hello, my name is Peter Christensen. I'm the team leader for the West Africa Coastal Areas Program. I want to respond to the question that was just asked, because in fact, one of the elements we have for the coastal program is that we are exactly doing what you're asking for, Tove, to facilitate the access of solutions and make the best out of existing programs that are available in Sweden, Nordic countries, Netherlands, and France, and elsewhere, through a set of hubs that are helping to coordinate the support to the countries. And in fact, we have a Nordic hub in development now, started with now in an interim phase with the Federation of Danish Industry, DI they're called. So we can put you in touch with them, and through that we're making an outreach through the Nordic countries for their interest and support of WACA. Thank you.
And going back to Tove's point, and I know Niels will want to add, definitely, Tove, it would be great to be able to benefit from your ability to connect us with other key actors, key actors that you're supporting as SIDA. You're engaging with a lot of stakeholders. In the spaces that we've worked on, there's lots of development partners with whom it would be great to establish partnerships on this work. Also, one of the reasons for presenting this to you is obviously as development partners, we want to enlist your support to this program to the extent that there are geographies of interest or themes of interest that you'd want to support, help finance, help articulate, help expand on the ground in specific initiatives, whether they're related to the World Bank or to your own development interventions on the ground that SIDA you are financing. These would all be great opportunities for engagement and to be able to scale up this work, because we have the proof of concept on a large number of issues out there. We just want to take it to scale. We want this to become a platform for job creation, a platform for standard setting for working with data observations, tackling issues, related to the ethics of the utilization of that data, so on and so forth. So we want really to transform this from being a set of innovative interventions or nice, beautiful pilots out there into long-lasting impact on the ground. Niels, I'll hand it over to you. We've got a few hands up and an additional question that's coming up.
Yeah, we'll go to the questions in a second. I just wanted to say to Toen and maybe anyone else who has similar reaction, we around this program, we would be happy to follow up with you bilaterally, and maybe you can help us set up that conversation with your technical partners that you think it would be useful for us to get in touch with. While we do think we have a lot of experience that is scalable now, and that's a key part of the objective, as Sameh said, in terms of how we shape up the program and the partnerships around it, we're still in a brainstorming phase. So we're keen to talk to many other brains as well to shape it up the most productive way possible. We go to Ram with EU India first, then to Pierre, and then to Hessel. Ram.
Good day to colleagues. Thank you, Neil and Sameh, for the lovely presentation. I have three specific questions. One is related to, are there any plans to expand this partnership to South Asia? That's my number one question. And currently we are also in India, we are exploring a similar kind of arrangement using ESA and Copernicus with organizations like CDRI, Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, where the potential of application of such partnership is quite enormous. So we are contemplating on such partnership over here. And my second question is about how do we address regional transboundary issues? Addressing country-specific issues is fairly straightforward, but transboundary issues of either there is a conflict or there is a possibility of enhanced cooperation. It could be water issue, it could be forestry, it could be biodiversity, or it could be transboundary, even value chain related issues. So is there any example of using such digital partnership to address the regional public goods, regional issues? Number two. Number three, how do we see the private sector over here? Still, there is a huge opportunity for private sector to play an important role on this partnership. So how do you see that can be stimulated? I'm talking about private sector in a much loose fashion, but my specific interest is about startups, because they are the one who are really using these digital technologies in a large scale. So how do you see such opportunities exist? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Excellent. So first, Ram, Niels, we'll take a stab and pass to each other. And I know we have lots of our colleagues from across the various global practices within the World Bank involved here. So I would love to enlist one of our colleagues from either environment or water on any of the transboundary issues. But this is a global program, so its applications in South Asia or in any other region is definitely contemplated. We're proposing to, I mean, that the main, if you want, criterion that we're trying to put it is the articulation between that program and existing or prospective World Bank operations, so that we ensure that the support that this program or partnership would bring, whether it's related to skills development, capacity building on the ground, can be harnessed and leverage, a much larger set of investments and policy dialogue on the ground. So that it would not be just a technical assistance activity, but a technical assistance activity tied with an existing operation. So where we have an operation or we can have an operation, there will be this articulation. On the private sector, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities out here. So the structure of this partnership, if you want, on the one hand, the European Space Agency, which has mobilized funding for its, if you will, cutting edge R&D product development, basically works extensively with the private sector in consortia that end up providing these services of working with this Earth observation, with the various sources of data, and producing, if you will, the services on the ground. And then the articulation with the so-called World Bank component would be to take this new ideation, and transform it into a much larger impact on the ground in terms of the skills development, the capacity building of local government, the partnerships with the ecosystem, including universities and think tanks, etc. The development of standards guiding, the use of data, and the achievement of the various types of impact we want to see on the ground in terms of transparency, accountability. If you want, it's the 8 principles applied across this range of services, articulated and creating the link between, on the one hand, the product development that the European Space Agency is leading on and for which it has mobilized the budget, and using that partnership to create that articulation with the existing engagements and landing on the ground. So I think in doing that, and this involves, of course, a lot of private sector in the development of the final product, in several of the partnerships. And also, I mean, this whole work around skills development is, at the end of the day, is about creation of new, if you will, digital skills that would bring about new enterprises into the local markets, etc. So I might not have provided all the aspects of the response, but I hope that would be helpful. And in a sense, it was also a beginning of a response to Manfred Kaufmann's question in the chat on the articulation between the World Bank and ESA. Niels, let me pass it over to you over here to maybe continue on these questions, and then perhaps get one of our colleagues from, to choose some example of our work that went into transboundary. Over to you, please.
So I think Peter already posted actually an example in the chat on how the Wahba program works with regional institutions to address elements of the transboundary issues that relates to those coastal issues that was shown in the video. So I think that's an example of how this program supports an engagement that is trying to tackle transboundary issues. The program itself is not going to set up to have an objective to tackle transboundary issues, but we may be able to channel information, data, knowledge, methods, know-how to teams that are engaged in tackling such issues. There was a question in the chat from Idia as well regarding how this program links up to national spatial data infrastructure work. Again, it's not going to be an objective of this program to create or sustain or support NSDIs. I think it's very, very likely that many of the projects we engage with, that those projects is going to have that as part of their objectives. But our objective is going to be this connection between knowledge and information and data that can be generated, and how to connect that across an array of different development engagements. I want to pass the word to Pierre.
Yes, thank you, Niels. Actually, I had a similar question on the national SEIs, and because what we are talking about is quite cutting-edge technologies, often led by cutting-edge organizations, tech-hubs, NGOs on the ground, also companies. So yes, again, same question. What is the place of more traditional organizations such as National Geographic Institute, but also how to make the connection with those, let's say, GIS policies, for instance, in Europe, we have Inspire. So that maybe that would be one of the challenges. Thank you.
Hessel, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Niels. Hessel bin Sameh speaking, Brazilians Academy Research Director for Tanzania. I also have a position at Delft University of Technology, and what I found to be very efficient is to have students, international students, also work with local startups, local innovation hubs, to really bring some technological novelties and try them out locally. Yeah? That brings two things for the student. It brings a lot of understanding in what context technology has to be used, and that includes that can include both satellite technology as well as ground-based technology. But for the local startup, it also brings a direct connection to that new technological novelty for local use cases. That was extremely efficient in the Resilience Academy case, where we had a number of students also from international universities work together with local people. And that led to demand-driven applications quite fast. And I was wondering if you can also somehow stimulate that movement in this program. So is there a modality to have student exchanges also from international students to local?
Thanks, Hessel. Sameh, maybe I can try to address a few of these again. Also,
yes, please, and let's draw also on Edward and other colleagues. Yeah, go ahead, please, Niels.
Yeah, just briefly to outline, and I think we then have a question from Nikolai Putscher. See in the chat. I think so there's this question on institutionality at a national scale or city scale, which of course is key to sustainability. And I think a lot of that institutional work is going to be picked up or is already being picked up by existing or future development engagements. And for those where this is happening, I think this program will be a super interesting additional support, because it would enable, and it would be super interesting for this program to connect with as many of that type of engagements as possible. But this program on its own is not going to try to tackle building national level institutionality from a formalized government point of view. We're going to be offering services that fits into that. And I think we're going to try to offer new approaches on skills building that, of course, relates to that capacity in an ecosystem fashion, if you will, through the partnerships with universities, through the partnerships that potentially could be organized as student exchanges, as you're suggesting, Hessel. So through building the skills, the demand for the skills, the practical capacity to use this type of technology data for development applications. That group of people, of course, also over time becomes likely public servants in the institutions that a country may be building. So they're certainly linked. And I'll let Edward maybe articulate a more coherent answer to some of these questions. But I want to first ask, let's see what came in here. If we had a question from Nikolai, did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, thank you very much, and a very impressive presentation. I'm really happy to be here. Coming from the board angle, I wonder, and we are always struggling now to see that how is monitoring of projects going forward. given all the travel restrictions and so on. And I found one of your, in one of your presentations, there was this map of Africa where you had all the projects of the World Bank as a spot there, and then you could tap on them and so on. I wonder, how is that working? I mean, if we have if their staff has a project in any part of the world and it wants to check on that, is the possibility that the staff can access the data, like pictures from space, and can kind of verify or falsify what's going on in the ground? Or is this very particular restricted only to projects that are part of your overall program? And in this regard, and the second question, if you have some doubts that things perhaps are not working on the ground as they should, do you have a possibility to apply drones or any other way to verify or falsify the information further with a more detailed approach to the site or to what's going on? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nikolai. I'll pass the word over to Edward in a second, and he will try to address your question and maybe also complement or correct what I tried to address earlier. I think we have another question from, there's a question in the chat from Bernard at SDC. How we envisage to tap into the potential and reconcile with open access principles. I think, Edward, you can maybe address this one as well. And then while Edward gathers his thoughts, I will ask Valentina to come in. Valentina?
Yes, good afternoon or good morning in other parts of the world. This is Valentina Villari. I'm working for the European Commission DG International Partnerships. We used to be called DGDEF, so you might remember us by that name. Anyway, so I had thank you very much for this meeting and the presentations, very interesting. I wonder if you would send around the different videos or so that we can also share with colleagues that couldn't be here today and that are also interested. So I was wondering about two things. One, and I joined other questions before, for example, on the private sector, but just to focus on two things. One is the cost of the different data and the digital solutions that are provided to the different institutions or implementing partners during the implementation of the projects that you have presented. So during the project, these are given, of course, without any cost. But what about afterwards? How can they continue to use this data or these different tools after the implementation of the project? So I wonder about that. Also, I had a question about the quality of the results of the data. Well, the data, but also the products that are created. So who or how are we controlling the results? Because, well, some of the projects are also working in cooperation with the different local communities or different local institutions. So I was wondering, how are we ensuring that the results are quality control? Okay. Thank you. That was my question.
Thanks a lot, Valentina. These are all pertinent questions. None of them are simple to answer in a short way. We'll give it a try anyway. And as I've mentioned earlier, any of you interested in a bilateral follow-up, we're super happy to engage with you. You'll give us more space to talk through some of these things. We don't pretend we have all the answers. We do have some answers, but of course not all of them yet. Chris, over to you. Maybe you can address the remote supervision question and of course come in on anything else you would like to add on to. Chris Ulbricht.
Okay, thanks Niels. Can you hear me well? Yeah, good. No, I just wanted to quickly maybe help answer the question on remote supervision, and it's a bit directly related actually to the cost question that followed. So with the European Copernicus program and the free and open data access to Sentinel data at the global scale, actually indeed we can provide solutions for both bank teams and client beneficiaries to access freshly updated and continuously updated satellite data in a kind of a service manner, right? So basically we have already started experimenting building systems together with the bank that allow matching those project locations with satellite information. And as Toni actually mentioned in his opening remarks, the Copernicus program has been a game changer mainly because of that, because the data is open and free, it's continuous monitoring on an operational basis, and it's a pretty high resolution that allows now to visualize things that you couldn't see before for free. Obviously, it's not just the free data, and that brings me to the cost question. What we and what this program needs to promote is basically a fit-for-purpose solution, right? So if open data can do the job, then perfect. But if commercial data, basically, if the added value that commercial data provides justifies the added costs, also in the operational thinking of how development finance feeds those operations, then it's very appropriate to tap into commercial data as well, right? So it's a bit of a tip and cue system where you do a first shot with open data and then dig further with commercial data as well. And we have been addressing both, and I'm sure the new global program, again, will address both angles.
Edward, can you come in and try to address maybe the open access question, and part of, or maybe all of Valentina's question, but certainly the part around quality control of results and who does it, and maybe elements on the sustainability, what stays behind with the beneficiaries in the country in terms of their ability to repeat use, for instance. Edward.
Sure. Thanks, Niels. I mean, first of all, to say that, we're at the stage of, I think, designing the partnership. So my understanding is that no doors are closed as long as it follows the principles. Things haven't been defined in their final form, but by and large, the objective is to leverage the new generation of tools for where there's a demand. And so by definition, there's a pain point. The traditional system isn't working to the needs that we foresee. So this links back to national spatial data infrastructure. We're not trying to reinvent all of GIS and all of NSDI, but certainly we do want to integrate and collaborate with the existing traditional actors and authorities and address the pain points where there is sort of a gap. And in that regard, it's not just a service of data. There's the tool, but then there's the value added, the aggregation on top of the satellite imagery of additional data sets, which may be open access, maybe free, or maybe for a service fee. And then there's also building the skills and the ecosystem around that to keep that tool evolving. So the way we really think of it is we're building these local ecosystems of service providers that are well positioned to take advantage of today's free and open satellite data and conduct research on what tomorrow's applications will be, which may be a lot more artificial intelligence applied to satellite imagery, may work in this tip and queue system that Chris referred to, where we have a sort of a free monitoring change service and then a sort of for fee follow-up service in terms of assessment and detailed inspection. So each case would be different. I can't say the final quality control is something that's built into that local ecosystem, those local service providers. But there are, I think, standards for the regional data, the satellite data, how we interpret that, regional goods that can be shared. And already ESA's Copernicus system is sort of an example of that, right? So we're hoping to leverage that. I'm not sure if that answers all of the question. I'd also like to make a comment also, I think, on there was a post on North-South universities, and I think that also links to Hessel's comment on North-South student exchange. I think our focus is on building the skills and the opportunity in the Global South to sustain the service, to develop that ecosystem. But that is very much enriched by these interactions with the centers of excellence wherever they are. And there's a piece here of connecting sort of the global state of the art to the local value chain, that local production model, which is going to be a mix of government agencies or local service providers. That can be startups, can be universities, can be traditional surveying firms. So I do think very much valuable to connect technical expertise from Europe as well as technical resources in terms of data and research and services, in addition to financing. And how to do that, I think it's up for discussion in those collaborations and that coordination. But part of that is encouraging the kind of North-South exchange we've seen, because I think the more we can promote the data that's been produced locally as a useful asset back in, the industrial parks and research centers of industrialized world, I think the more value people see in investing in those local relationships. And we saw that with the Zanzibar imagery, where the drone data was released with an open data license, and that helped them run an artificial intelligence competition for which Zanzibar got a free AI image classifier as buildings. And I heard actually a couple of days ago that Luxembourg Space Agency has invested in a startup that is doing building classifiers that was trained on the original Zanzibar labeled building data set. So, these little feedback loops are going around and around, and that's reinforcing and bringing value in sort of unexpected ways. So I think very much strengthening that data feedback loop is something worthwhile to try and achieve. On the monitoring and supervision, it depends on the level of ambition to set up, but I think it's possible to use these tools to monitor the portfolio, to provide open access and transparency. The bank does not itself own drones to do supervision, but rather embeds into lending operations the capability for those projects to perform supervision of works, of infrastructure conditions, sometimes for risk management in terms of pre and post disaster assessment. So this is very much something that's been scaling up, and the pandemic has catalyzed demand for that. But within the bank, in terms of our own operation, we'd have to comply with national rules in order to deploy drones, and it happens on a very ad hoc basis, but not as a systematic, directly sort of third-party supervision. But within the projects, I think it's very much foreseen that those tools are there, and they can be triggered by a satellite-detected change. So those are a few thoughts, Niels. Thanks.
Edward, maybe quickly on the quality assurance as well, part of the question from Valentina.
Yeah, apologies, I don't entirely recall the question, but by and large, there's a spectrum of data value aggregation, right? So, we work with particular satellite products that may be a foundational product on which there's a lot of very contextual information that can be aggregated. And so it's critical within the standards element to have good guidance on how you do quality control, especially when we talk about mixing crowdsourcing techniques with sort of very robust scientific models and data sources. So there's really a broad range of quality control methods, and I think that's part of that enabling environment we have to get right. In the case of the DLR presentation you saw, they were assessing the quality of their predicted urban change by, in a sense, crowdsourcing 1.3 million local ground verifications. And what they found they needed about 8 points or 8 different data label collectors to have a 99% confidence in the accuracy of that particular point. So it's a space where, volume of collection can get you to a certain confidence level, and it's a emerging field of how do you quality assure this kind of innovative but atypical data sourcing. So again, it's very case by case specific when we get to the sort of front line of that digital value chain. But in the early stages of satellite production, of course, we rely on the sort of industry standards and some of the work that Copernicus has laid out.
Thanks, Edward. And on the request for sharing the videos, yes, absolutely. We'll circulate the link to the videos of the presentations, so you can send that on to anyone in your networks that may be interested in that. Any other questions? I am trying to monitor here the chat. Any raised hands? I don't see any raised hands.
Stephen Coulson from European Space Agency. Stephen?
Can you hear me okay? Good.
Yes,
now,
go ahead.
Niels, I just wanted to add a comment following Ed's comment on quality assurance and reassure Valentina that as a technical R&D agency, we've spent the best part of the last 20 years working hand in hand with private sector in Europe in developing most of the applications that you've seen in the videos you've shown today. So there's a very strong scientific basis, and we put high emphasis on good quality and thorough and strong quality procedures that these companies have in place in producing what they are delivering. So this hasn't just been invented yesterday. There's a long scientific history, and we believe Europe is at the forefront of this type of digital information. The point is to try and get these skills transferred into developing countries and build the digital economy in those countries. So we're very pleased to hear your end of the story and see how this fantastic technical capacity we have in Europe can actually be put to work where it's needed most. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else want to come in before we move to closing? You will have about 3 seconds now to raise a hand or pose a question. One, two, three. All right. Thanks a lot for all the comments and questions. And to repeat again what I said earlier, open invitation to any of you for a bilateral follow-up. You can follow up with me or Christina or anyone in our team, and we'll set up the conversation with you and the network that you want to bring in around it. And we can continue to talk about many of these issues and learn from you and your experience as well. But with that, I will end my part and give Sameh the last word. Sameh.
Let's pick, there's Adelusi sent one last question. Maybe we can pick it and then I'll bring it to a close if you want. Adelusi Titus. If there's any relationship between digital government readiness assessment and what we're discussing. So can we pass it to the team?
Edward, do you want to address that?
Yeah, thanks, Niels. Well, I'm familiar with the sort of open data readiness assessments that the World Bank has done through its digital development practice. And quite often it's sectoral in its look, but geodata is a cross-cutting theme. So that there is certainly, I think, a link there, and ideally a open data readiness assessment would identify areas where sort of traditional digital services are working well and where there's a demand to innovate and to step it up and looking for something new. And that's really where this program fits in, right? I think we're trying to meet the demand to scale and to accelerate. And so by definition, focus on areas that are in short supply, having a pain point. And that ought to come out through these readiness assessments. But I can't point to a specific example off the top of my head right now. Sorry.
Thank you, Edward. And I guess maybe with that, you know, to perhaps bring this to a close, I mean, we're coming to the end of the dialogue, and I really hope that we've all gained, you know, a good grasp of this historic moment that we're in. And in a sense, this important sense of urgency to bring sustainable development to scale and to accelerate impact on the ground. So we need to make the most of our new technologies, and this new and next generation digital Earth imaging technologies are going to be an essential part of the mission. Now, in these past 2 hours, we have heard about, you know, the transformational impact that these technologies can have to spur development solutions that are both locally appropriate and scalable, while at the same time being sustainable. We also heard about the need to account for multi-layered risk and to promote cross-sector solutions, and also discussed the power of non-traditional partnerships, that leverage the concept of co-creation and what it would mean for us as development partners to move forward. So I've really enjoyed the discussion, on the Digital Earth Partnership Global Program that we've presented today, and wanted to thank each and every one of you for your contributions, ideas, and solutions. We've received a message, that I think is clear for us. I'm continuing to pursue that this line of work. We've heard from several of you of how interesting it is, and ideas on how to harness more, the community, the private sector, ensuring quality control, etc. And we will take these recommendations and the guiding questions to prepare a new program concept note with concrete next steps to launch these ideas. And we hope to circulate it for your comments as soon as it's ready. So let me reiterate that, for us to achieve this ambition and scale that we have set forth, it's not just going to be about bringing the science and the latest data and tools to our client countries, but it is about going further and using these technologies to really totally transform and revolutionize the way in which we work for sustainable development. We need this community. We need you as partners, strategically, financially, technically. So I hope you do stay engaged with us as we move forward. Before we bring it to a close, I wanted to thank our colleagues at the European Space Agency for their long-term partnership with the bank, their commitment to the development agenda, and for being a founding technical partner of this work that you've seen today. We're proud to be part of ESA's Space for International Development Assistance initiative, and we look forward to continuing to work together. I also want to thank our GFDRR team for organizing this event, for being the brokers of the program, for all the team leaders and the teams from across the various global practices who have shared their work, presented, joined us in the conversation, and to each and every one of you for devoting those 2 hours of your work to join us. So I hope we will be able to count on your support, and that we can work closely to fulfill this important agenda. And with that, thank you very much, and I wish you all a great rest of this Earth Day. We will be sharing this information with you, the presentations, the videos, and once again, thank you very much.